Hello everybody, my name is Nairi and this is Fly Little Birds, and I've got 2 adopted sons. So today we're going to talk about the subject of why talking about adoption and why adoption in itself seems to cause so much upset, so much discomfort, and can actually be quite painful. And I'm going to kind of base it on my experiences of my 2 sons because that's all I can do, and so I hope that it will help those of you who are watching. So first of all, when it comes to adoption, the bottom line is that there's going to be a sense of loss for the adoptee because they know that at some point in their lives, whether it's very young or older, that their original family have not been able to continue with them. And so that in itself, even that knowledge, brings a sense of loss, emptiness and pain. And for some adoptees this gets something that's more of an increasing awareness. For other adoptees perhaps it's there all the way along. For this reason as well, sometimes my sons will not want to be reminded they're adopted. They won't want to acknowledge it or admit to it because actually it causes them pain thinking about it. And also one has to kind of realise as well that for whatever reason that family have not been able to continue, some of those reasons might also be very painful for the adoptee and also might take them a long time to get their heads around. So for my boys, for example, they know that the family, both parents, had their own struggles and addictions, so they have to kind of work out, first of all as children and then into teenage years and then as adults, what that really must have looked like for their family. And actually that's not very easy to get your head around, and it can be very difficult as well to accept that perhaps your parents that you kind of don't remember perhaps have had such struggles and difficulties in their lives as well. The other thing I think that happens, especially I think as adoptees get older, is that they begin to feel that kind of loss of identity. So it doesn't really matter how well we help them to be enfolded into our family, and we work really hard at that. And I actually think that our boys are really settled. So even though we have a lot of difficulties with them, developmentally and from childhood trauma, I think they're very settled and they get on really well with my adult children. But that doesn't matter. What matters to them deep down within, even though I feel they sometimes can't articulate this, is that they're different. So even though we treat them the same, even though my siblings, my birth children, treat them the same, I think deep down, and I think this is probably the case for most adoptees, they feel different from their adoptive family. They know that their roots are somewhere else, and that can cause people pain. Not always, of course. I'm speaking in terms of like this will not be for everybody. This is just what I'm reflecting on when I'm looking at my boys, that especially the young one knows probably facially he's quite different, and that therefore somewhere out there is a family that he once belonged to that may look more like him, may actually hold similar personality traits or interests, and that is different from our family. I tried to spend time with the boys talking to them about these issues, and they do come up regularly, and talk about really why families fall into difficulties and why it might be that they end up with addictive patterns or they're not able to care for children, and why adoption might finally have to happen. Talk about the fact that they may have had difficulties as children, and things might have happened in their past that have led them to particular behaviours, and that is not my boys weren't loved by them. It's more about the fact that for whatever reason those parents couldn't prioritise their care. And so try to sort of explain to the boys that it's not about love necessarily. It's not about the fact that they weren't even cared for or they weren't wanted. It's about the fact that at that point in time that family could not meet those needs that children need to have met, and kind of to help heal that pain for the boys of rejection and feeling that actually there is rejection there. So I always say my older son has no interest in meeting the birth family at all, but that doesn't mean to say he doesn't feel rejected. That doesn't mean to say he doesn't feel different. It doesn't mean to say he doesn't feel displaced or isn't struggling with his identity. It fully means he might still be experiencing all of those things. It just means that he's not curious to see where his roots are. He's not curious to find his way back to that family. The other thing I've found really helpful when talking to the boys about adoption is actually explaining to them what family really means and helping them to understand that regardless of what's happened in the past with their birth family and why they couldn't have been continued to be cared for and loved by them, that family means a whole lot more than who you were born to. Family means being there for each other, continuing to love each other, continuing to providing safe home, providing experiences and memories, and it means all of those things. And so therefore anyone can become your family or seen as your family if you are able to start identifying with them and finding that your safety, your love, your home is with those people. But at the end of the day, when you start looking at adoption, whilst many people see it as very positive, especially if you're an adopter and you've had a positive experience of adopting and perhaps you've not been able to have children or you've wanted to add to your family, and for you it's been an amazing experience to bring children into the home. Unfortunately, that's not the case for everybody. So first of all, not every adopter has a positive experience. Secondly, not every adoptee feels grateful or sees the need to be grateful to those adoptive parents. They still have their hurt and their pain, and they don't feel the need necessarily to be singing out the praises of the family who have taken them in, and that's fine because their lived experience might be rejection and pain, and so the top of their list is not, praising up an adoptive family. And for some people, the adoption does not run smoothly either side, and that perhaps the match does not go brilliantly, so the adoptee doesn't get the love and care and experiences they want. They just go into another family that can't provide that for them, and the adoptive family might actually have perhaps the wrong motives or just don't gel with the child, and it just doesn't go very well. So that's another reason why it could be painful. But the all-embracing situation is there should be no need for adoption, and actually the bottom line is this: there should be no need for adoption. There should be no need why a biological family cannot keep their children, and the attachment to a birth mother is really strong. Even if a child is taken away at birth, there has been a form of attachment there from the womb. So there is a sense of being torn away from a situation, being torn away from the primary attachment, and that is a negative thing. We shouldn't need to have to do that. We should be able to keep children within their families, and the fact that we can't always do that, and in some countries the need for adoption seems to be greater than others. In some countries it will be closed adoption, in others there might be the opportunity to keep in contact with the birth family. Children can be in very unsafe circumstances. They can be in neglectful circumstances where they are not going to get their needs met either physically or in a loving way, and you want those children to be able to thrive. So it's not necessarily the answer to everything to adopt, but it could be the answer to the child being kept safe. In some situations, it could be to the answer actually the child staying alive. And we fostered, and we know that sometimes things can be pretty extreme for children, and you don't want to think of them being in a situation where they can't be warm at night, they can't be fed, they're not going to know where the next dangerous situation is going to come from. You don't want to think of children being in that, but actually that can be the case. And then of course there's the kind of darker side of adoption, where in countries where families can't provide financially for children or money is extremely tight, then there could be trading happen with children where money is being passed over for adoptions that don't actually have to happen, or if they are happening, it is financial gain for the family and not necessarily done because it's out of love. It's a kind of like trading situation where children are trafficked for money. Unfortunately, adoption holds a lot of pain, a lot of questions, and it's not always positive for both ends. But what I would say about it, of course, for us has been that we have provided a home for the boys. We're not necessarily the best thing that ever happened to them, but we are there to keep them safe. We are there to love them, to nurture them, to help them grow up into hopefully happy adults, happy men, and we are going to do our very best to do that. So we see adoption as a journey. We see that we've been blessed to have the boys, and that for us, whilst all this pain still happens, the overriding feeling of joy that actually we might be doing something positive And actually we have a really good bond with them, a really good attachment with them that's growing every day, then for us there is still the positive side, there is still the side that we think is to be celebrated about adoption. But I've covered a few things for you why people don't necessarily celebrate this word, and I hope that's helped you to see, understand different perspectives, and I hope that you'll be encouraged to carry on with my channel. I'll put a playlist at the end for you for some adoption topics, and I will see you on Fly Little Birds. Thank you.